Good afternoon, everyone. This is Eric Petrocelli with SIS, and I'd like to welcome you to our continuing educational webinar series. Today, we're going to be taking a look at solving your procurement and spend management challenges in Dynamics SL. Before we begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about SIS for those who may not be familiar. SIS was founded in 1996 and is headquartered in Duluth, Georgia, which is just outside of Atlanta. And we deliver business solutions that help project and service-driven companies unify business processes and applications across the enterprise, thus delivering better visibility and efficiency. Our professional services that we offer include current state assessments, taking a look at how you're doing things, business process analysis, fit gap analysis, specialize in software design, development, and deployment, custom application development, ERP and CRM implementation, rapid deployments for hub and spoke rollouts, mom and pop shops. We also offer on-premise or in the cloud deployments. Benefits of working with SIS. We're a Microsoft Gold certified partner. We have over 20 years of experience serving Dynamics SL customers just like you. We have a dedicated support and customer care team. We have experienced partners, consultants, and development team. We understand your industry's best practices and the software in order to bridge the gap between business and technology. We have a broad industry-focused solution offering including Dynamics SL, Dynamics CRM, Dynamics 365, and Microsoft SharePoint. A few housekeeping items before we begin today. If you have any issues during the webinar, you can email me or email info@sisn.com. All your phone lines are muted. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end. If you think of any questions between now and then, feel free to go ahead and type them into the box. For optimal viewing of the demo today, please use full screen mode. We're going to be recording and sending this out along with the slide deck shortly after we wrap up. We've got some exciting special holiday pricing to announce. We've got a 10% subscription discount and 8 free hours of implementation for any webinar attendees for new company orders placed between now and the end of the year. If you would like more information about this, please contact Debbie Peavy. Today, we are honored to have Scott, who's going to be presenting for us today. And with that, Scott, I'm going to go ahead and give you the control of the presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the introductions and looking forward to having the opportunity to present our fraction spend management solution to the SIS Dynamics SL community. I'm just ensuring that my screen is all being presented, and with that, let me just give a little bit of background information on our company and our solution. Our company is called Fraction. We merged with eRequester at the beginning of this year. Our combined companies are headquartered in Seattle, Washington, but also with offices in South Africa. So we cover a huge part of the world in terms of North America, Europe, and the African continents. And we have customers worldwide. We're a longtime Microsoft Gold certified partner, as well as having been working with Dynamics SL for many years. Our solution, eRequester, which is now branded as Fraction E, is a leading spend management solution. It's integrated in real time with Dynamics SL, and it helps companies save time and money in connection with purchasing, as well as related spending for non-purchasing invoices or expenses. We have over 1,000 customers worldwide, tens of thousands of end users on the platform, and it's very much a cross-industry solution. The customer base is really broad in the sense we have clients in construction, nonprofit, business services, as well as many other industries, keeping in mind that this system is intended to help companies get better pre-approval to spend money. So you want to buy something, get a pre-approval before you buy it. If it's over a certain dollar amount or based on parameters you can describe, then the system can help control that. Of course, all companies have to pay the bills, and it certainly can help companies streamline the approval to pay as well as the approval to purchase processes. The integration with Dynamics SL is something that differentiates our solution, Fraction E, because we do have a real-time integration with that solution, and as a result, it minimizes the need to have any type of redundant data entry or maintenance of master data tables. Some of our clients are identified, just a list of representative customers, again, in broad industry categories that utilize our solution: health partners, plans in healthcare, casino clients looking to control their spending are good candidates, but also a lot of nonprofits, Habitat for Humanity, and others that you see identified here, for example. What our solution is looking to address are common challenges that companies have in connection with spending. For example, companies that have paper-based purchase requisition processes, or if you have a process that is maybe manual and therefore requiring a lot of tedious steps to get purchases made or approved, or spending approved to be paid, vendors calling, not knowing the status of their payments, managers not knowing, if somebody got the items that they requested. All these types of challenges are what our solution addresses. Lack of insights into the budgets, people spending money when they don't need to because it's either over budget or you actually have one of those in the closet already. So as you can see here, typical challenges that exist when you do not have an automated spend management system in place. Among the great features and benefits of our Fraction E solution are the online interface for initiating requisitions. It's all online, therefore you can have visibility over the status of the transactions. You can route for approval based on parameters that you can describe or define: dollar amount, department, type of request, project. It's nice when things go to the right people under the right conditions. And then, of course, the system sends out notifications. People are alerted. It warns you if it's going to put you over budget. This provides also better collaboration, so you can communicate about the status and the details without having to search through your emails or offline. And ultimately, it just saves a ton of time and money in connection with spending. And this typically results in a tremendous ROI compared to the cost of the system. And that real-time integration with SL is going to help with the efficiencies and controls that most customers would be looking for. When we talk about what processes we are looking to ameliorate, you can see somewhat of a flow chart that indicates how data from SL flows into the Fraction E system, so people can make requisitions to buy from approved suppliers for inventory or non-inventory items or services, allowing those requests to go for an approval workflow. You can create RFQs and send those out if you like, to create requests for quotation, check against the budgets if you have GL sub-account or project budget set up in SL. And ultimately, this is going to enforce your internal policies and procedures for spending, hence the spend management. And then once approved, it's okay to purchase. The PO can get cut, and then you can do confirmation when the goods or services are rendered, and ultimately match the invoices to get them paid and vouchered out of SL in the AP module. There's a few different integration points with SL. We have some flexibility there, and we can touch upon that subsequently. We also have what's a a scalable solution. So if companies want to just get some basics in place, then you can add as you go if you need more stuff later. But ultimately, the catalog of modules includes purchase requisitions, approvals via mobile devices or desktop, POs, change orders, if you want to make modifications to purchase orders. The ability to do receiving or invoice matching can take place in SL or possibly in our system, depending on the configuration. The need for like check requests, invoice approvals is also available if there are certain categories of purchases that don't need POs, like utility bills would be a common case, but you might have other exceptions. We could do check requests. Again, the budget controls, flexible reporting and search capabilities, and the integration. That's a pretty common package that you see listed there. There are some other tangential modules available, like expense reports is available, as well as request for quotation and a few other modules. But right there is a pretty common procure to pay type of package that we would bundle up for many customers. With that said, I'm going to just jump right into the application at this stage. Sometimes I take some intermediate questions, but today what I'll do is just kind of walk through the system, and then at the end we can see if there's any questions. I'm looking at what's referred to as the fraction login screen. This is where a user might go to initiate a request to spend some money or a request to buy something at your company. My company here is just called Fraction SLPO. That's just the name of the company. You can have multi-company support. So if you have multiple companies in Dynamics SL, you would just connect each one of these companies to your database. And when you log in, it's going to take the user, Joe Requester in this case, into the system where he has been presented with his dashboard. And here you can see he has a number of transactions already in progress. For example, there's a My Requests tab. He has 4 requests that he made in the past that are in progress. Each one has a number. Sometimes these can be referred to as requisitions. So that's a requisition number. I tend to call them requests because they don't have to be purchase requisitions. They could also be invoice approval requests or check requests. And you can see the name of the request, whether it's office supplies or computer equipment, whatever name the user gives the title to go with the number. Invoice for utilities, friendly name. And there's also the name of the supplier. Who do you want to buy it from, or who do you have to pay? And here the user will have put that on the transaction. If they don't know the vendor for some reason, somebody later in the approval workflow can populate the vendor. The buyer can do it if you have a buyer. The system supports both centralized purchasing as well as decentralized purchasing. There's also this feature called request type. You can categorize different types of requests. For example, you might have standard operating expenses, just standard purchase requests, but maybe you also want to have a category for CapEx or computer-related IT requests. You can create any number of request types and then make those available to the end users to select from. And based on that request type, you can have approval workflow. So it goes CapEx to the finance department, standard purchase request to the department manager, computer request to the IT department. And that could be combined with the dollar levels or even the department or the project to drive the approval process. We also have better visibility over the status of the transaction. Joe makes a requisition. He wants to buy something. It starts out in a status of incomplete, but once he submits it, because he's put in the data that he needs to put in, it goes into a status of waiting. That means it's pending approval. And it even shows you the name of the person who it's waiting on, the manager, Bob, in this case. So his invoice is currently waiting for Bob to approve it. Bob will have been notified by email, and he can approve it even from the email if desired. And then once it gets approved, it goes into an approved status where you can order it. it's okay to generate a PO once it's approved because it's been approved to spend. There's other statuses as well, like require change, which will allow an approver to send it back for more information or modifications. So that's the introduction to our dashboard for the My Requests tab. And you can see there's a few other tabs across the top. There's a pending approval queue where you can see anything that's currently waiting for your attention. Joe doesn't have anything now pending his approval. There is a receiving tab where you can see a list of all of your open purchase orders. So once it's been approved to buy, it'll create ultimately a purchase order. The system will assign the PO number for at the point of approved purchase request, and it cross-references the requisition number. You can even see the status in terms of whether it's been ordered but not received or partially received. If I want to make a requisition now, there's a couple of ways I might do so. Maybe Joe wants to buy something, or at least ask if it's okay to spend some money. You can either use the new request button on the top left, or if you happen to have what's called a template, you can create a template, a new requisition from a template. This guy, Joe, happens to have a template for what he called hanging file folders to buy from the vendor named Alphabet. You can create a template for yourself, or your department manager or procurement person could create templates for the departments or the users. And then if you do have these templates created, what's nice about them is that all the data gets predefined on the template. And then all you have to do is click this copy button, and it will replicate it into a brand new purchase requisition. So I copied my template, and it's created what's called, in this case, a standard purchase request. It assigns a brand new requisition number, 6371, and all the line items that were on the template got automatically cloned into the simple entry screen where you could see the part number, the item details, and if you would like to just put some quantities on any of these lines, you can go ahead and just put some quantities down. In this case, I just entered some quantities for the 3-line items for which I am interested in asking for. And if I want to leave a few of those at 0, that's fine. It'll automatically remove any 0 quantity lines. And when you hit save, it's just going to save those line items for which you've entered quantity. It navigates to the review screen. So at this stage, you can modify, if you need to, any aspects. You can also just review the details to make sure everything looks good. So this is a requisition by Joe to buy from the vendor named Alphabet. It's from the operations department. It's a standard purchase request, and it's for the 3-line items for which we've entered quantity, including those quantities entered. The cost got defaulted from the template, so it's $1,980. Each line has been automatically coded to a default general ledger and sub account. There's no project on this particular request, but if I want to add one, I can click on the item and add any other details. You can also see a little warning here that this is going to put me over budget. The system does have a budget checking feature, which will create this red exclamation point if it'll put me over budget for the account, sub account, or project. And if you click on the GL code, it will actually give you a budget to actual report. For example, I'll just click on that GL account. Assuming that you actually have the budget set up in Dynamics SL, I'll show you that in a moment on a different one. If you set up budgets in the general ledger, it'll give you a budget report because it pulls the actuals and the budgets from SL, and then it compares and shows you a report of how much you're over or under. In this case, what I'll do is just, maybe I'll attach a document here. You can upload any supporting information, like if you have a quote from the vendor, if you have a contract, you can attach a spec sheet, whatever justifying information you might need to allow your managers, the buyers, or even the supplier know what it is you're ordering can be uploaded. So I just attached a spec sheet. There's also a feature that lets you create requests for quotation. If you'd like to get pricing from a vendor or multiple vendors, you can create RFQs and send those out. in this case, I'm just going to hit continue, and it's going to tell me if anybody needs to approve this transaction. The system at that point will calculate, based on your rules, who, if anyone, needs to approve this requisition. Because it's $1,980 from the operations department, it tells me it has to first be reviewed by Manager Bob, but because it's over the manager's authority, it has to then go to the director. And then once the director says it's okay, I have it going to a guy named Bill, he's the buyer in my company. He'll be responsible for generating the PO and placing the order. But this workflow is completely configurable, and it can be based on very flexible parameters. It can be done by department, dollar amount, type of request, vendor, project, or other rules you can define. You can add some notes here if you need to, and you can then submit, and it will, at that stage, send a notification email off to the first person in the approval workflow. This transaction now has been submitted for approval. And you could see this requisition for file folders is now in a status of waiting for Manager Bob to take action. So Joe here has copied his template, added some quantities, attached a document, and submitted this requisition. He could go make one from scratch if he wants to, but I'm going to save that for another time and just log out. Joe has done his job. He needed some file folders. He's asked for them, and now he's waiting for Manager Bob. Manager Bob is hanging out, and he gets an email. And if he checks his email, whether it's on his smartphone or at his desk, he'll see that email there. And the email is very intuitive. It tells the user, Bob, hey, Bob, your approval is needed for some hanging file folders. And it even includes a copy of any attachments, like the spec sheet in this case. So he could see Joe's requisition right there with all the header information, as well as the line item details. And he can go ahead and look at that and decide if he's okay with it. One option would be for him to just say approve. Right from the email, he can hit the approve button, add a comment, and hit send. And that'll send the approval right into the system, so he doesn't have to even log in. Alternatively, he can reject it with a different comment. Sorry, it's over budget, try again next year. He can ask Joe to make some changes or ask Joe to give more information. And he could do that from the email, and it just feeds into the system based on authentication tokens that has been built as part of the security. Or he could click the link in the email. If he clicks the link, it'll take him directly to the transaction, assuming he's logged into the system. Or he could just wait to the end of the day and come to the login screen and see if he's got anything in the system. So there's a few options for that approver to take action on the transaction. I went ahead and just logged in as the manager. His name is Bob. He's looking at this requisition now, but he sees it in his dashboard that he has 2 transactions currently pending his approval. Specifically, he sees there's this hanging file folders request. It's in a status of waiting, and he could see that it got sent to him today on November 14th from Joe. He can see right there from his dashboard the extended detail, the spec sheet attached, the line item details, the quantity cost, extended totals. If desired, he could check the box and just approve it right from the dashboard. Or if he wants to drill down further than this, he can click view or double click, and it takes him into the full review screen where he may want to look at the budget report or look at other finer detail about the transaction. But he can see the history that this is currently pending his approval. The director's not yet been notified, and you could tell where it is in the process. There's also what's called a request history, showing a date and timestamp, when it was created, when it was submitted. This gets updated further as it gets approved with comments, so people know what's going on with the transaction. You could add some comment like, this is fine, and either just approve or reject. You can edit it if you need to correct something or make some changes if you have that right in your profile. Let's go ahead and just hit the approve button. So Manager Bob got notified, he reviewed it, and he approved it with a comment. And it's taken him back to his dashboard where he still has one transaction currently waiting for his approval. It happens to be this invoice for utilities that's waiting for him. It's been sitting here for 2 years. He's refused to reject it or delegate it, but there is a proxy approver feature. There's a delegation feature as well if somebody's out of office. Lots of ways to move things through the funnel or move them out, but this is just sample data and it's just been sitting here for a couple of years now. What happens next is Manager Bob can log out. He got notified, he approved it, he went back to the golf course. The next person, because remember there were 2 approvers on the transaction. So I'm going to log in now as the director. Her name is Jane. She gets an email as well, so I certainly could do this from the email. You can see that she got notified that her approval is required. Some other emails have gone out as well, but let's go ahead here and take a look at the second person, Jane Director's visibility. She's going to log in from her smartphone. Let's assume that she's on a mobile device. We have a responsive design interface for approvals, so let's go ahead and just kind of shrink down the screen a little bit to maybe more iPhone looking like or Android interface here. So I've logged in as the Director Jane in my Fraction SL company, and I'm looking in my pending approval list in that capacity, and I have one request pending my approval, and you could see it's for hanging file folders asked for by Joe for $1,900. So if I'd like to review it, I can click on it and I could see it's waiting for my approval. He says he's out of folders, and you could see the 3 line items, the quantities, the cost, the extended totals. They're turning red because they're warning me it's over budget. You could click on the line item and scroll through the items and decide if everything looks good for you. And you can see the attached documentation, the audit trail, the request history, which shows it was created, submitted about 6 minutes ago, approved by Manager Bob. He said it was fine about 2 minutes ago. So once you've done your review of all these details and you're all right with it, you can go ahead and take appropriate action. You can enter a comment if you want and hit approve, and that's going to now indicate this request has been successfully approved by Jane Director, and therefore she will no longer have it in her pending approval queue. She's free to go play on the golf course with Bob. So she logs out as well. What happens next is going to depend on whether your company has centralized purchasing or decentralized purchasing. There's a couple of options, there's configurations. One option, if you're decentralized, is we can send that purchase order notification automatically back to the requisitioner, Joe, and say, hey, it's been approved, go ahead and buy it. Here's a copy of the PO. Or it could just go to your purchasing coordinator, purchasing manager, so they can see the approved request and generate a PO or get some additional quotes, or accounting could correct something. So it just depends on your workflow. I've got it set up to go to a buyer, some form of centralized purchasing in this particular company configuration. So I'm logging in as Bill, my buyer, and he has this create purchase order tab where he can see that he has 2 requisitions that have been approved and are ready to be reviewed for PO generation. Here's the hanging file folders one that got sent to him on November 14th, today's date, and he's going to give it a final review. He hasn't seen it yet, even though we all saw it twice as Joe, Bob, and Jane 3 times. But this guy is looking at it for the first time, and he sees that it's been approved. It's for $1,980. As he looks at this, he can also see that it was approved by manager and director with their comments, and he's the final person in the chain. You could look at the supporting information. I am going to create the PO and place the order. So you add some comment if you like. the comments are really good because it allows other people like Joe to know what the status is and what you might have said along the way. So you can communicate right there and it'll all get captured in the history. Here I can go ahead and generate a purchase order or take other action if I wanted to do something different. The act of creating a purchase order is that the system will assign a purchase order number. In this case, PO 900-119 got created. That requisition's been posted. 6371 is the requisition number, and now there's a purchase order. Now, integrated with SL, that will automatically generate a purchase order into Dynamics SL, creating the PO commitment. So there's no manual re-entry of the PO into Dynamics if you're using the purchase order module. If you're not using purchase orders in SL, this still works. You just don't send the PO to SL, it just stays here. And then later it gets, the invoices get done in this system. But what happened is we have this document called a purchase order. I just clicked on it. So this is a sample of our purchase order form from our company to that vendor for those items. And the PO itself shows who requested this, who approved it, who's the buyer. This is a pretty configurable form. So if you need to do something like make some adjustments, we can typically make those with some settings that we have available. You can also print this or email it. If I click email right here, you could send this purchase order to your vendor, and that will allow you to just send it along with the attached documentation. If you have a quote or a contract, something you want to send to the vendor can be included, terms and conditions. So when I hit send here, it's going to email the PO off to the vendor, assuming that I have it set up to send emails. What happens next is there's an integration point. So this is PO 900-119. If I were to pull up Dynamics SL, and if I have the purchase order integration set up, that purchase order will automatically flow into PO in SL. I just clicked on the purchase order number field, F3, and then you can sort by number here. Today's date is November 14th. It looks like right at the top there, close to the top, you can see there's that purchase order 900-119 that got automatically created for those 3-line items. There's the file folders for the $9 each, and it has all the header and the line item information populated. So at that point, it's the true SL PO that can be received or matched inside of Dynamics. If it was an inventory item, it would of course allow updating of inventory goods received as well. So that's the rec to PO process, having used a template. At this stage, I can also show you a couple of other areas of the system. That particular transaction can be received in Dynamics, or alternatively, if you wanted to receive it through Fraction, there is an option for receiving. I'll go ahead and log back in as my guy, Joe. He's the guy who asked for these items. What happened to it from his perspective? Well, it started out in the My Request tab. It went to the Approvers Pending Approval tab. It went to the Buyers Create PO tab. And now it's in the Receiving tab because we've ordered it, but we haven't received it. So you could ask Joe to receive the stuff, or you could have a centralized receiver. So I just highlighted this, and if I want to, I can go to the receipt screen, and there is also the ability to see the requisition history. So on this transaction, you can see that it was created, it was approved and posted, and sometimes, depending on how you set this up, you can do receiving. This person actually doesn't have the right to do the receiving in this system. But if so, I can go ahead and confirm my receipt. Let me go ahead and just double check that I have. Yeah, so I have the purchasing module in SL is configured here. You can go into receipt invoice entry in SL and receive it, or you could do that through the Fraction system. It's a bilateral integration. If you're not using purchase orders, then everything takes place in Fraction until the point of invoice entry, and then invoices would flow into the financial module to the voucher and adjustment entry. if you're not using purchase orders in SL, we create vouchers into the AP module. If that makes sense, I'm glad to take questions on that topic subsequently. So with that said, there's just a few more areas I'm going to touch upon briefly and then open it up for questions. I want to point out that when you make a request without a template, you'll be able to pick your request type, and you can set up different types of requests. So you might have expense reports for reimbursements, invoices that are non-PO related, and ultimately you can go through the wizard here and set up your request header, add your item details, and then review and submit for approval. If you want to look up any transactions through like searches or reports, you can use the search feature, which allows you to query the data based on different parameters. So you can look up transactions by status or vendor. And if I go ahead and just want to see anything in the company that's waiting for approval, you can query by that status. I have one invoice here waiting for approval. You want to see all of your open POs, you can search by those statuses, and it'll give you a list of transactions that match those criteria. All of the search results are sortable, so you can sort by department or any of these columns. You can move the columns around if you want to reorder them. You can also export your queries out to Excel if you'd like to turn those into ad hoc reports using Excel. And most of these columns here are available for export at the header level, or if you want to see the line item details for anything, you can use the line item radio button, and then you'll see all the line item details, including the items being ordered, the accounts and sub-accounts, the project names, quantities, etc., to see what's in the system historically and currently based on different statuses. We also have some requisition reports in the reports menu where you can run requisition reports by department, by GL code, by request type, by user, as well as depending on how we're configured, there's also some purchasing reports and some receiving reports available at the company level, depending on our configuration, where you could run some purchases reports by department, receiving reports, etc. And also you can generate custom reports using SSRS, Microsoft SQL Reporting Services. With that said, it's about 37 minutes in, and I think I'm going to open it up to questions at this stage. Let's take a look and see if anyone's got any questions for me. Oh, it does look like there's a question about how the system is implemented. This Fraction it's a web-based application, Fraction E, and it is, in order to effectuate the integration with Dynamics SL, it's a real-time integration. So we install it on the same local area network as Dynamics SL. It's a SQL backend. It runs on IIS. So it doesn't have to be on the same server, but it just needs to be on the same LAN as SL to make the data talk back and forth in real time. So it's on-premise, but it is web-based. Users only access it through the browser. And the pricing is determined by the number of users and which modules you'd like to include in your package. Let me see if there's any other questions. I would also like to point out that we have something called vendor punch-out. I didn't touch on this previously, but vendor punch-out is the ability to allow users to make a requisition inside of Fraction E and then pick a vendor such as Amazon or Grainger, CDW, Dell, a lot of big vendors, and connect the requisition to the vendor's website. And then they could build out their shopping cart, put their quantities in the vendor's shopping cart, and then when they hit checkout, it transfers the items electronically back to the requisition so that they can route the requisition with those items for approval. And then once it's approved and the order's created, it'll automatically create the PO or the electronic order to the vendor through what's called punch out. So as long as the vendor supports CXML, which most big vendors do, we could connect to those vendor websites. So that's very popular for a lot of companies. Any other questions? I'm looking in the chat window here and I don't see anything further at this point, but I'd be more than glad to answer questions as part of the follow-up process. Eric, do you have anything further?
No, I don't see any other questions coming through, but I want to take this time and thank you for being with us today, and thank you for presenting this. This has been very, very helpful, and I think that it's been a good thing. So thank you everybody for taking the time to attend. If you have questions that didn't get answered or you think of something later, you can always reach out to us, or if you would like a more detailed deep dive of what you've seen today, let us know. Thanks, Scott, again, and hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.